question here. You know Saddam Hussein, right? The man that America dug out of the ground and hung on live TV. What if I told you that America is the reason he existed in the first place? That's the story they don't teach you in schools. Because America didn't just arm him, they didn't just fund him. They found him when he was a 22-year-old nobody. They trained him, they used him, they protected him when he was killing thousands of people. And at the moment he stopped being useful to them, they turned around and called him the most evil man on earth. How convenient. So this is exactly what happened. In 1959, Iraq had a new leader. His name was Abdul Karim Qasim. But the United States didn't like this guy very much. Why? Because he was nationalizing their oil. He was pulling Iraq away from Western influence. The country was getting too independent for the United States. They were talking to the Soviets, who at the time was the United States' greatest enemy. And that was enough for the United States to say, oh no, this guy has to go. And so what did they do? The CIA assembled a 6-man squad set out to assassinate Abdul Karim Qasim. And one of those 6 men was a 22-year-old who was ambitious and hungry for power. His name was Saddam Hussein. But then the assassination attempt failed, and it was Karim's bodyguard that was shot and killed. Saddam Hussein, during the escape, was also shot in the leg, and then he fled from Iraq and went to Syria at first, before he went to Egypt. And in Egypt, he was on exile, literally being bankroled by the United States, waiting for another opportunity to get back to Iraq. Then 4 years later, the coup was successful. Karim was assassinated. And then the Ba'ath Party, which Saddam Hussein belongs to, came into power for the first time in Iraq. And then Saddam Hussein obviously flies back from exile and is given one job. He became the head of secret police. What was his job? His job was to find out and eliminate whoever was going to be a threat to the new government. And the CIA helped him to do his job. They gave him a list of names, addresses, communists, leftists, labor organizers, opponents, opposition members, journalists, anybody that was going to challenge or be a threat to the new government. About 10,000 people were killed. Over 100,000 were arrested. Many were tortured. Some were never even seen again. The Ba'ath Party lost power in 1963, but Saddam Hussein is a patient man. So in 1968, the Ba'ath Party took power again in a second coup. And with this coup, Saddam Hussein became the second most powerful man in Iraq. And over the next 11 years, he systematically, carefully, ruthlessly removed every person that was above him while gently climbing the ladder of leadership, such that by 1979, he was just one man left. So he called a meeting of the Ba'ath Party leadership. He stood in front of the room while an aide called out names of people from a list. If a person is called, the person is being escorted out of the room by armed guards. The people that were left in the room and the people that were escorted out, or the people that were whose names were in the list, were alleged conspirators, alleged traitors. The people that were left in the room, the men, were either crying or they were applauding nervously so that they don't look disloyal, trying not to be next. But Saddam Hussein just sat there, casually looking, smoking his cigar. And at the end of this particular exercise, Saddam Hussein came out as the undisputed leader of Iraq. Men who were escorted out of the room were executed. The United States saw all of this going on with Iraq and Saddam Hussein, but they still kept their relationship with Saddam Hussein going. So in 1979, Iran had an Islamic revolution. The Shah was gone. Ayatollah Khomeini became the new leader of Iran. And then the United States felt bad because they had lost their most powerful ally in the Middle East region. And they were looking for a way to get that back. So in 1980, Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. And yeah, the United States said, yes, this is our guy. So what did they do? They supported Saddam Hussein. They sent him money, arms, satellites, intelligence, technology, whatever he needed, even chemical weapons, whatever he needed to use on Iranian troops. He did that. And the United States knew that Iraqi troops were using chemical weapons on Iranian troops, and they did nothing about it. I mean, it was to their own advantage, right? By 1988, the war between Iraq and Iran had lasted for 8 years. But as a matter of fact, Iran was starting to win because their soldiers had been able to push through Iraqi territory, and they were entering major Iraqi cities. And as a matter of fact, some Kurdish communities in northern Iraq were helping Iranian soldiers to move through their land. Saddam Hussein saw this as betrayal, and he decided to send a message that none of them would forget. So what did he do? On March 16, 1988, an Iraqi aircraft flew across a town, a Kurdish town called Halabja, and dropped bombs, not explosives, mustard gas, so that when these bombs ruptured, they released poisonous chemicals that killed 5,000 people, men, women, children, all civilians. Some died in their doorsteps, some died in their rooms, some died on the streets. They were just frozen at the point where the gas reached them. And what did America do about this news? They went to the United Nations and tried to block the condemnation Iraq would have had. They even suggested that Iran might probably be responsible for this attack, but they didn't provide any evidence. Nothing. Now pay attention closely, because this is where the United States' relationship with Saddam Hussein started going south. After the war with Iran, Iraq was in serious debt. Iraq owed most of its neighboring countries, and it owed the highest to Kuwait. And because of Saddam Hussein's inability to pay, he decided to wage war against Kuwait. He had already stationed or mounted his troops at the border with Kuwait, but then he needed the United States' approval or permission before he could invade Kuwait. So on July 25th, 1990, the American ambassador to Iraq, named April Gillespie, met with Saddam Hussein at the presidential palace. And then Saddam Hussein asked, "I would like to invade Kuwait. What would America do about it?" And the lady replied, she said, "We do not care about your Arab conflicts, and your issue with Kuwait is not concerned with America." And because of this response, 8 days later, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And the moment Iraqi troops and tanks rolled into Kuwait, America's calculation flipped upside down. America reasoned that if they gave Saddam Hussein so much power to control Kuwait, which is a country that is positioned strategically in an oil-producing region, and Saddam Hussein is able to control Kuwait, Saddam Hussein will have so much oil, so much wealth, so much power. And as a matter of fact, a lot of persons were concerned that Saddam Hussein, with his much power, might start threatening other countries like Saudi Arabia. And these are countries that hold one of the world's largest oil reserves. So America had to step in. When April Gillespie was confronted about her response to Saddam Hussein concerning the Kuwait issue, she said, "Obviously, I didn't think, and nobody would have thought, that he wanted all of Kuwait. I thought he wanted to take a part of Kuwait. But that doesn't make it any better." But anyways, the United States was able to step in, and the man who they funded, who they armed, who they protected, gave intelligence to when it was convenient for them, suddenly became the greatest threat to regional stability in the world. And within days, they were able to assemble a large coalition force from Europe and the Middle East, and they were able to drive out Iraqi forces from Kuwait. This war was called the Gulf War. And then 9/11 happened. On the 11th of September 2001, the United States was attacked. About 3,000 persons were killed. And the United States looked for who to blame, and they started pointing fingers at Saddam Hussein. They claimed he had biological weapons, chemical weapons. And the truth is, yes, he did. But it was the United States that helped him get it. So the United Nations started looking for these weapons, for these chemical weapons in Iraq, and they were able to find nothing. America was not satisfied with this result, so America started looking for means to invade or go to war with Iraq. And then the administration, the US government, suddenly remembered the Halabja issue where Saddam Hussein used chemical gas on the Halabja population. This was an issue that when it happened, they went to the United Nations and defended Iraq. They actually even suggested that Iran might be the one responsible. And then suddenly, because Saddam Hussein was no longer useful to them, They remember that, oh, he was an evil man. And yes, this was the reason America invaded Iraq in 2003, March. And within 3 weeks, the Iraqi troops collapsed completely. But Saddam Hussein was able to escape and nobody found him. For 8 months, the United States military searched for Saddam Hussein, but he was nowhere to be found. Then in December 2003, the United States military got a tip that Saddam Hussein was at a small house in his hometown, just outside of Tikrit. And then they went there and then they dug up a hole, and there Saddam Hussein was. He was dirty, exhausted, holding a pistol in his hand. He surrendered without firing a single shot. And then on December 30, 2006, he was tried by an Iraqi court and he was found guilty for crimes against humanity. He was hung. And his video of his execution leaked online and people watched. But now, this is not the story about how evil Saddam Hussein was. No, that part is not complicated. He was evil. This is a story about who knew, who supported, who helped when it was convenient. And when it was no longer convenient, they pulled away. Because somehow inconvenient truths find a way of not making it to our history books until someone decides to talk about them. So let me know in the comment section the part of this story that triggered you the most. I'm Miriam, and I tell world stories in a way that is put without confusion. I'll see you in my next video.